I'm talking with my 9-year-old today, and the last time Donald Trump Jr. was in Montana, my wife actually got to meet him up at Edwards, up at the airport. So I'm telling my 9-year-old, I said, hey, how cool is this, Jackson? I get to go meet the president's son, Donald Trump Jr. And he's like, yeah, Mom already did that. There's just nothing you can do to impress your kids around here. Right?
Trust me, I have 5 kids, so I know. It's rare when I get to impress them.
And then we're driving over, and my wife's like, ooh, I wonder if Kimberly Guilfoyle will be there. Here's Kimberly Guilfoyle along with Donald Trump Jr. right here in Billings, Montana. Donald Trump Jr., it's an honor to be able to talk with you. Thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure. It's great to be back here.
Now, I know this is probably such secret, classified information. I don't know if you can talk about it. It's so secret that Hillary wouldn't even email this type of information. But, I've known for a few years now that you like to come to Montana and hunt. Mm-hmm. Where do you like to hunt? What do you like to shoot?
Well, listen, I like to come all over the state, and I've been all over. I'm the first graduate of the Wharton School of Finance, where my dad went to school to move out to Colorado, actually, at the time, to be a bartender and a fly fishing guide on the side. And, so I got to drive all over the state, and every summer during college, I'd sort of work for 2 months and take the last month off and literally drive out west, live out of the back of my truck. So, I know most of the rivers in the state, mostly probably the western side of the state. And then, I've hunted all over as well. I've gotten to do it for so long now. I have friends in the state. I just come and go either, shoot, hunt, fish with them whenever I get the chance. And so it's great to be back, and it was great to be able to campaign here last fall because I got to sort of come out, do some campaigning, hang out with some buddies, catch up with them, and then obviously go do the usual stuff that happens in Montana, which was awesome.
Yeah, go shoot some gophers, of course.
As the New York Times called them, pregnant dogs instead of prairie dogs. No, seriously. This is Donald Trump Jr. was in Montana shooting pregnant dogs. I go, what? This is the narrative. This is what happens when things go to the mainstream media.
Yeah, exactly. But also, I think back on this, here in Montana, in New York, I'm sure everybody recognizes everybody from the Trump family, almost instantly. But in Montana, you're probably walking down a trail, hauling your pack just like the next guy, and they just say hey to you just like you're anybody else out there.
No, it's been great. And, again, it's a little different. When I'm in a suit, there's a lot more recognition factor than when I'm in camo. Partially, I'll sometimes get the double take, but they're like, no way. Because there's no way, he's going to be in camo walking down a trail, whatever it may be, and it's the case. But no, I've had a great time in the state and really always enjoy coming back, and it's always great to be able to come out and do something like this, the Montana GOP event tonight, just because, I can hang out, and then it's a great excuse to spend the rest of the weekend with my buddies.
Yeah. In fact, also, we're joined here, of course, by Montana's state auditor and Republican U.S. Senate candidate Matt Rosendale here. Matt, man, how cool is it to have Don Trump Jr. here in town helping to promote the campaign? This is a huge election this fall.
It is. It's really a big thrill for me, and it's very humbling to know that Don and his dad have come out so strong to pledge support for this race. Everybody around the state knows it's going to be very close, and I think that is certainly going to be one of the factors that we need to make sure we push us over the line. I have to believe that as you're walking down the trail in that camouflage, the one thing that might be a giveaway is those Secret Service guys that are hovering around. You might just give it away that you're not just a typical hunter on the trail.
Well, I've signed off on a few occasions, so my hunting is sacred to me, so I try to make a distinction there.
Well, one of the things we're going to try and do is reintroduce you to eastern Montana, all the parts east of Billings, and come out and do some antelope and some turkey and some pheasant hunting in the lower Yellowstone.
I promise you, it won't take much to get me out here. That is not an arm twister. That'll be fun. I look forward to doing that.
Yeah, I loved it. I think it was right after the primary, or actually it was ahead of it. It was the weekend before the primary election. You said, hey, see you soon, John, to John Tester, and you linked to this New York Times piece to John Tester saying, yeah, we're coming out here because that's how important this Montana Senate race is when it comes to the future of this country and your dad's agenda, President Trump's agenda back in Washington.
Well, listen, you have someone that votes almost 90% of the time with the other side, and I don't know what the other side's platform is. Hate and nonsense is not a political platform. Okay, they're not campaigning on jobs because it's never been better. They're not campaigning on great unemployment numbers because it's never been better across the board. That's not just one demographic. That's white, that's black, that's Hispanic, across the board. Women. So I don't know exactly what they're campaigning for. Certainly not national security and safety. I mean, look at what he's been able to do with North Korea and all these things. I mean, I've been watching for my entire life. North Korea is this incredible problem. It is what Barack Obama said to my father is the biggest problem out there. And I watched the pundits on TV. Well, for 35 years, I've been dealing with North Korea. No. For 35 years, you couldn't even get a meeting with the guy. So he took an unconventional approach, and guess what? I heard, they're dismantling 4 of their sites as we speak. That's winning. So when the other side does this, you can't do what I see so many of these sort of liberal Democrat senators and congressmen in states that we won and did really well in. They sort of show up in an election year, and 6 months before, they start pretending they're MAGA. They start showing up pretending they're all these things that they're actually not. And you can't vote with Chuck Schumer 90% of the time, approximately. Like he's done, like Tester has done, and say that, oh yeah, I'm basically a conservative. You're not fooling anyone, and the people of Montana see it. They see through all that nonsense. They see through the lies. You can't put forth, anti-Second Amendment legislation and be with the people of Montana. It doesn't work. Those are platforms that are incredible if you're running for mayor of New York City. But John Tester's not doing that. That's why I think, Matt here has an incredible chance to do something, right? Because the people get it. But what was most disgusting, or what made me most interested in coming out here for this race, because I think it's most indicative of Montana values, was what John Tester did as it relates to Ronnie Jackson, Admiral Ronnie Jackson, when he was put up for the VA. I know Ronnie, I've seen him around the White House, and I know my dad. He's the guy that sort of gives guys a chance, right? This is an admiral. He's gotten to know him over the time. He's like, hey, Ronnie, you do a great job. You're obviously a veteran. You're an admiral. And
maybe
an
Iraq War
you're at Iraq War. Yeah. I'd love you to try to take this on. I've seen my dad do that and empower people for his entire career. Guys that maybe, hey, you're going to be the CEO of this. You're going to run this. Well, sir, I've never done that. I know you. I know you have street smarts. I know you have the work ethic. I know you have the general ethics. You can go do this. So for John Tester then to get on TV, to say all these negative things, by the way, totally unfounded. No one's talking about that. But notice how it's not a story anymore. They didn't find anything. They couldn't justify anything. That, to me, was the most disgusting thing I've seen in politics.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as an Iraq-Afghanistan veteran in Montana, we've got second highest per capita number of veterans in this state. And to me, you jump on national TV with unsubstantiated allegations. I'm in radio. I have people coming to me with allegations about people all the time. I can't just jump on the radio and air those allegations about our governor, for example, without facts, without people on the record. But he can do that with an Iraq War veteran. If he would do that to Ronnie Jackson, he would do that to any of us veterans.
And I think, to me, that's the point. I mean, that, as I know, sort of the Montana values, every aspect of it, that to me is the one that was most disgusting. I can even understand the other one. I totally disagree with them, but they're politics. But doing a hit job on that, just because this is the guy that Trump wanted, on an honorable, great guy, that to me is disgusting. And that to me is the one thing, frankly, that should resonate more than anything, more than even the ridiculous voting record, with the people in this state, and I think it will.
Yeah. It will.
Yeah, I think it will. Yeah, Matt Rosendale.
The only thing that he's going to be able to do is run a campaign that is in denial. He has to try and deny reality. He has to deny the reality that Obamacare is a train wreck. He has to deny the reality that the VA is in a shambles. He has to deny the reality that Neil Gorsuch isn't making a positive impact on the Supreme Court. He has to deny the reality that people have more money in their pockets. So you can spend millions of dollars in advertising and commercials, and people will not dismiss the truth, the facts. And that's what he's got to go against.
What are you running? Are you not happy with the job numbers? Are you not happy with the economy? Are you not happy with more people at work? Because that's what his voting record says. So I don't even get it. And again, hey, I'm the son of a rich guy from New York City. A lot of my friends are liberal. I used to be able to say, okay, you know what? In the classical liberal sense, I can put myself in those shoes and probably argue both sides of the equation pretty well. I can't do that anymore. I hear what they're talking about. I hear the things they want to reverse. When I talk to the Trump followers, I go, guys, we got to recognize, just because Donald Trump isn't on the ticket in 2018 doesn't mean that he's not on the ticket. It doesn't mean that all of his policies of success, win after win after win, guess what? They're all on the ticket. Because the other side's platform is we just want to erase everything that Donald Trump does. If Donald Trump came out in favor of oxygen, the other side would say, I mean, it may solve all our problems. Yeah. I say that jokingly because then they'll get on TV and say that I threatened to kill it.
Yeah,
but if he came
use the chemical name and scare everybody for what oxygen really is.
Exactly.
Or something. That's what I find really fascinating, I think, about the whole complexity here. Because, I know we're looking forward to also seeing your father back in Montana and seeing the president. Yeah, seeing him back. How soon do you think we'll see him back here?
I don't know, but I imagine as we get closer, to really drive home the point, because, you you will see a lot of that California and New York money pouring into this Senate race to help John Tester
Already seen it
create
right
a
now,
message.
yeah.
You know, I see him doing the fake stuff with the hunters. Guess what? He only got a hunting license a few years ago when people called him out for never having held a hunting or fishing license in the state of Montana.
Yep. I remember that from 2012. He wore an orange hunting vest in his campaign ads, and it's like the guy hadn't, for 15 years, he hadn't had a hunting or a fishing license. Come on.
So, you know, anyone can fake it. Anyone can pretend. But, again, I think the people of this state, more than most, you know, you can get away with that stuff in other places, but I think the people of this state appreciate genuine and real character. And
your father is genuine. I think that's what people love about it.
I'm going to tell you what he's thinking. And I think, by the way, I think that's welcoming, because I think people in this country finally wanted a politician who wasn't afraid to say the truth, who wasn't afraid to call someone out, who wasn't going to just toe the PC line because someone who knows nothing about anything, you know, the elite that he spoke about so eloquently in the speech the other day, we're not sure why they call them the elite, because they're not doing all so well and they've made terrible decisions for this country. But he's the only guy that's willing to fight for him, and that's what this country wants right now. They need a fighter who's willing to fight for America, willing to fight for American jobs, and that's what it is, and that's what this race is all about. We need more people in D.C., like Matt, who will go there and fight for that agenda, because that agenda benefits America. It benefits our kids and our grandkids, and we've been shipping their American dream abroad for the last 60 years.
Yeah, and when you talk about a fighter, that's one thing about Matt Rosendale. You know, he's been elected from Glendive, Montana. Eastern Montana consistently has voted for Matt Rosendale. And you talk with people that say this guy is a fighter and he will fight for this state.
That's what I'm really, really pleased to do, is point people to my record. Because then they can see that I actually do serve the way that I campaign, and there's so little of that nowadays. There's so few people that are willing to actually take and give those answers, and without regard to, oh my lands, what are the political polls going to be today when that? If you're making those decisions and you know that you're making them for the right reasons that are in the best interest of the people of this state and this nation, I'm very comfortable doing that. The people in Eastern Montana, I've worked beside them. You've heard me say I've hauled sugar beets from the field. I've worked cows in the fall, and I've driven T-posts into the parched earth after a prairie fire has come through and destroyed my neighbor's belongings, and that's the kind of person that they want to send back there, that they know that when you're there voting and they're out trying to make a living, that you've got their best interest at heart.
This is what I find so fascinating too. You know, as a little kid growing up in northeastern Montana, my mom was a single mom working at the Cottonwood Inn, you know, but yet I think most kids like me in Montana feel that we have more of a connection with Donald Trump, a real estate developer from New York City, who's actually going to fight for people in Coal Strip, Montana, fight for those coal jobs, fight for us and our families, versus, you know, John Tester, who's just going on $15,000 paid vacations with his beach buddy Chuck Schumer down to Cancun.
He's got his $1 million home in D.C. He's got all of these things. I mean, he's become the swamp. Now, I don't know what he started off his career as, but he is the definition of the swamp. He's the definition of hypocrisy as it comes to these things. People appreciate Donald Trump. And again, no one recognizes the irony of all of that better than me. But Trump is the guy that's been able to say, hey, I'm the billionaire from New York, but I can still go talk to auto workers in this state, union workers that were just union Democrats, and guess what? They're all voting for Trump because they know he's fighting for them. They believe it, because guess what? The only person in this country that didn't need that job was Donald Trump, and yet he said, as an American, as a father, as a patriot, I want to fight for this country. You know, and guess what? We weren't naive to what was going to happen. You see it in the media every day. I mean, they just kill after kill after. I'm like, I don't even know what they're trying to get. Like, is he not winning? Is it not a track record of success? Is it not a incredible conservative accomplishment? Even the conservatives who are against him, because they've gotten very comfortable in the world that they've created in that swamp. They've got no one's ever called them out. There's never accountability. The failures doesn't matter. You get reelected. You keep doing what you're doing. All your friends make a lot of money in government contracts, and everyone's happy, except for the people that they are supposed to represent. And, I think my father's been able to do an incredible job of that, just fighting for the American worker, letting them know that he's doing it. And they believe it because they see it in the numbers.
Yeah. Aaron Flint here with Montana Talks. We've got an interview here with Donald Trump Jr. himself here in Billings, Montana, and also Montana State Auditor, Republican U.S. Senate candidate Matt Rosendale here ahead of both of their speeches tonight at the Montana GOP convention. I was going to ask you, if we wanted to get our governor to send a thank you letter to your dad, to the president, our governor, Democrat governor, he thinks he can run for president in 2020, along with about every other Democrat out there. But he was criticizing the Trump tax cuts. His administration was saying, you're going to cause this huge hole in our budget back here in Montana. Well, now we're seeing a Trump bump in revenues. I mean, you should be fist bumping everybody while you're here, because we got a Trump bump in revenues. We're seeing more revenue than they even expected coming into Montana, thanks to the Trump tax cuts in the economy.
It's hard to believe, but it actually makes sense to have someone who's run a business like Matt Rosendale, like Donald Trump, make these decisions, because you have people. I remember during even growing up and coming out of college and watching the Senate Finance Committee after sort of the 07, 08 collapses. You have people making trillion-dollar decisions in D.C. that have never run a business. You had, I remember some of these Congress people, questioning, the head of Goldman Sachs, asking him about how many home loans they did. Well, it's not even their business. It's not what they didn't know the fundamentals of how a mortgage worked, let alone the numbers. But when you're making trillion-dollar decisions, maybe we should have someone that actually understands what those things mean. Maybe that someone who understands the mechanics of what's going to happen, and that's what we have now. We have a businessman, and that's what Matt is as well.
I think one of the things that demonstrates the big problem up there is that, we are going to generate record amounts of revenue, $3.4 trillion, because of tax reductions, because it stimulates the economy that much. And the problem is, we're going to spend records amounts of revenue, approximately $4.2 trillion dollars, excuse me. And so we still have got to send people to Washington that are not afraid to go through, to analyze the budget and say, this is an area where this money is not being utilized efficiently. We need to be able to go into the agencies and say, we can find efficiencies over here. We can go in and take the rules and regulations, which your dad has done an incredible job of. I think they've eliminated 35,000 pages of rules.
22 new regs for every new one in there have been eliminated.
Yeah.
Okay, because that frees up business. Because, again, these rules weren't put in there because they made sense. They were put in there by some lawyer whose friend is going to benefit by doing this. They were illogical. They were outdated. They were never adjusted, so they just kept adding new rules. So they said, hey, the goal was 2-to-1 that they wanted to eliminate. It ends up being 22-to-1 because they've got rid of that, and that freed up business to hire people, to bring people on board, to create revenues. And the bottom line, it's working.
Yeah, sure.
It's working, and you just can't send someone to D.C. who's just going to fall lockstep with Chuck Schumer and with Nancy Pelosi and do whatever they say, because they have no idea what's actually going on in what I call the dark zone of the country, meaning everything outside of New York and Malibu. Because that's all they care about, because that's where their donors live.
Voters, the East Coast and the left coast.
I'll tell you another example of great work that your dad did was to sign those executive orders. We hate to see it done as an executive order because Congress couldn't accomplish it, but at least we started making some steps to resolve this health care issue. And when he signed that executive order to extend the duration of the short-term health care plans, and then was able to get the language inserted into the tax reform that removed the penalty for the individual mandate, those two things alone opened up opportunities for people that they will see in 2019 to start addressing their health care in a multitude of ways that they weren't able to do under this Obamacare mandate. So now all of a sudden we start driving down the cost of health care. Again, that's going to put more money in the individuals' pockets, and it's going to put more money in the businesses' pockets, and it's going to stimulate our economy without the government stimulating the economy.
The thing I'm thinking here, the phrase is so much winning. In fact, I was talking with Grover Norquist, who's also in town for this convention, and we were talking about this, and he made the point that, Donald Trump is winning so much and so big that on so many big issues like tax reform, that there's big wins that people don't even know about because they got buried in an even bigger win. I mean, like, for example, drilling in Anwar. Heck, we were talking about that on Capitol Hill 20 years ago when I was a college kid working on Capitol Hill.
We're energy independent now.
Yeah.
In 16 months, we are energy independent.
I like the goal Senator Daines had last week at the Energy Summit. He says, we want to be energy dominant. There's a new goal for us, and I really love it because we have the ability to do so. Yeah.
Donald Trump Jr., favorite place to fish in Montana. Now, you can be general. You don't have to be too specific.
Listen,
secret spot.
This is secret, no foreign information.
Listen, for me to come out and float the bighorn and stuff like that, I have some friends that live around there, and to be able to go do that, that's a pretty special place. But, there's also a lot of good small streams. There's a lot of good, it just depends what I'm in the mood for. I mean, that's obviously bigger water and sort of, but it's also nice to just, get on a trail hike up and catch, 4-inch brookies in a, unnamed little creek. So I like it all, and it's always great coming out here during elk and deer season. Last few years, I've been out during Thanksgiving, bring my boys. Actually, that's where I sort of got into Montana politics in hunting camp. I ran into Steve Daines. We were hunting together with a mutual friend of ours that was there, and sort of that's how my political connection started to Montana. That wasn't pre-set up. It was just like, hey, by the way, we became buddies. He was like, hey, you want to come out and do this? That's how it started. So I have a great relationship with Steve, and have been hunting and shooting with him now for a while. And I bring my boys out here and just try to pass on that great tradition. Turning little boys into men.
There you go.
Well, and speaking of hunting issues, in fact, I was chatting with our friend David Spady, a Bozeman, Montana native, and he's on some of these wildlife boards and things like that. And it was funny because the media and the liberal environmental groups were all complaining, Trump is stuffing these wildlife boards with trophy hunters. And it's like, it shows that they don't get the West, they don't understand hunting, that hunters, that sportsmen are the real conservationists. We wouldn't have any of these conservation programs without the hunters.
This all started, I mean, with Roosevelt's going back in, quite a long time. And I mean, Boone and Crockett set up right here in Montana, and I mean, I'm on that, right? So have been for a while. I'm probably the youngest guy on that board full time, and conservationists were hunters were the original conservationists. That's where it started. These guys going out there and doing that. The amount of money that they put back into wildlife, the care that they take for the land, the reason we have sort of the open spaces that we do in this country, all started off because of that. So these guys, they're the ultimate conservationists. They're the ultimate in terms of, across the world, really. But the North American model has been so successful in preserving that. And in putting, Ryan Zinke in there as the Secretary of the Interior, he understands that. He's opening up the game corridors. He's, fighting to keep those things open. They've actually opened up new lands for public access, because it's not about trophy hunting. That's what the left tries to use that word in some sort of negative connotation.
Constantly bashing hunters.
If you shoot an elk that's a little bit bigger than the other elk, is it a trophy? Yeah, everything's a trophy. But my best trophy ever that I've shot is a raghorn 4x4 that I shot after 28 days in a row when I was living out west on public land with a bow at 7 yards, because it was about the hunt.
Yeah, exactly.
Now if I shoot a larger elk, there's more meat to it, so maybe it's a bit more trophy, but it's not necessarily about the rack. And I think that's what Secretary Zinke certainly understands, that he knows that it's about making sure that regular guys have that access, that they can get their kids out into the woods. If they used to be able to go out their backyard, now they have to drive 6 hours to be able to go somewhere that's overcrowded. They have no access because the environmentalists say, well, you can't possibly take a trail. We're not going to maintain any, we're going to let the culverts go. We're going to let the roads go. Then there's no access. Guess what? Not everyone can go hike 35 miles in. I take my vacation times hunting, so I'm sort of a bit of a, I'm all in. That's what I do, but not everyone's going to do that. And to make sure that that exists for the next generation, we have to make sure that it's there for regular guys.
The disabled veteran hunters out there, 100%. all those types of folks.
They've been denying. I mean, folks around Montana know that we have had so much access denied through the federal lands, and Secretary Zinke's been doing a good job. But that's the same kind of thing that we've worked on at the state level. So through the school trust lands and the work that I've been participating on in the land board, we have actually opened up access to 45,000 additional acres of ground for the people of Montana to hunt, fish, and recreate on. We've opened up 16 miles of additional roads that they have public access to. In addition to that, though, we've also harvested 47 million board feet of timber. And so we have to make sure that we continue to utilize all of these lands for everything, for everybody.
And that's the big one, by the way, the timber thing, where, some of these groups, and there's a lot of groups that sort of market themselves, they're pro-hunting, pro-this, but they're basically, you can't do anything, you can't touch anything, we don't want you doing anything, except for if we have areas that are landlocked, it's public land, and we'll fly in with helicopters and go hunt it and pretend it's public land. There's plenty of those groups, and they raise a lot of money then to campaign for those basically anti-hunting causes, despite the fact that they're marketing themselves as real hunters. So that is a contention. But the timber thing's a big issue, because they leave the standing timber, it's dead, it's dying, which is also, by the way, oftentimes the worst for the animals, right? Because there's no new growth, there's no growth on the ground, but it also becomes a tinderbox. It's a matchbox waiting to ignite, and we saw what happened last summer with that. So to be able to go in there to sensibly harvest some of that timber. You create jobs, you create revenue, you create this, and you also then create new growth, which is better for the animals. It's a win-win, but you have so many people campaigning against it, and what do you end up with? You end up with massive forest fires, you end up with massive losses, you end up with federal government, bailouts, where they have to come in and say, help us with these fires. You have people losing their homes, all because they can't sensibly or refuse to sensibly manage the resource that they have.
Aaron Flint here with Donald Trump Jr. and, of course, Montana State Auditor Matt Rosendale. I mean, you can tell Donald Trump Jr., this guy gets it. He gets Montana. Of course, so does our state auditor and our Republican U.S. Senate candidate, Matt Rosendale here. Donald Trump Jr., maybe a final question for you. I know because we got to wrap up here. You got a big speech to give here in Montana tonight, but how focused is your dad? How focused is Donald Trump going to be on Montana and on this election this fall? Just how personal is it to him, especially after how he trashed Admiral Ronnie Jackson?
Listen, obviously it's very personal because of that, because Admiral Jackson was a close friend of the family, then became really close. You can see the way they get along, and he wanted to give a great man an opportunity. And when someone like Tester goes in there and just salaciously just destroys him with no backup, by the way, and there's no consequences to that. Again, very anti the Montana values that I know, certainly with the people that I've hung out with and that I do spend time with and whose couches I sleep on when it's elk season or deer season. It's disgusting. So it's going to be a big one, but it's also going to be a big one because if you look at John Tester's voting record, you say it's very against Trump. This was a Trump state. They get it. They understand it. If people see that, they see through the noise, they see through the California money and the marketing campaigns that will be spent here to try to paint John Tester like he's this big MAGA guy. He's the exact opposite. Just look at the record. Matt Rosendale is going to do an incredible job, and we're going to be out here pushing really hard for him.
All right, Donald Trump Jr., great to see you, and Kimberly Guilfoyle as well here in Montana. Matt Rosendale, final thoughts from you.
It's going to be a hard-fought race. It's going to be very close. We're going to need everybody to come out and give us support and help us through here. But having Don and his dad come out is going to be a really, really big help. And the margins in the United States Senate are too thin for us to take a chance, to take a risk on losing this seat. We have got to make sure that we win this seat so we can continue to support the president's agenda, which I've said many times over. It's good for America and it's great for Montana.
All right, Matt Rosendale, Donald Trump Jr., a pleasure. Thank you both for your time.